The galaxy had never been so silent. After centuries of exploration and conflict, humanity's place in the stars was suddenly and shockingly erased. The Encore, an ancient and powerful alien race, had made their decision. Earth, once a thriving hub of humanity's dreams and ambitions, was now an outcast. The message had come suddenly, like a dark storm cloud hanging over Earth's cities, casting a shadow of fear over every corner of the planet. Exile the humans, they demanded, from the stars and from galactic space. It was an order, not a suggestion, and no one in the United Earth Council could refuse. In the quiet of the emergency meeting room, the Earth's leaders sat in stunned silence. The ambassadors from the galaxy's other races had been silent since the attack. The Encore had struck Earth's most powerful fleets in a surprise assault, leaving them battered and broken. Ships of every size had been destroyed in an instant, the fleet's flagship a smoldering ruin, its remains scattered across the void. Earth had fought back with everything it had, but they were outmatched. The Encore's technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. They controlled the stars, and they had made it clear. Humanity was a threat, an unpredictable and dangerous species that could no longer be allowed to travel freely in space. Exiled, Earth's president whispered. The word felt like a blow to the chest. The Encore had not just threatened humanity. They had stripped Earth of its place in the universe. No more alliances, no more trading, no more interaction with other species. Humanity was to be quarantined, confined to its homeworld, never again allowed to touch the stars they had fought so hard to explore. The world's people were shocked. News outlets broadcasted the order around the globe, and a chilling silence followed. For the first time, humanity realized that the galaxy was not their playground, that their expansion beyond Earth had only made them enemies. The Encore had grown tired of humanity's aggressive nature, their unpredictable actions, and the consequences of their expansion. The powerful alien race had decided Earth's place in the universe was no longer in the stars, but on a barren, isolated planet, alone and vulnerable. For the first few days, Earth's leaders scrambled. They sent urgent communications to all the allied races who had fought beside them in the past. The Zorethians, the Vorten, even the long-forgotten Solorians, they all received the same message. Help us. The Encore will destroy us. But there was no answer. The galaxy had already turned its back on humanity. Those who had once called Earth a friend had suddenly become distant and uninterested. Some said it was because the Encore were simply too powerful to oppose, and others believed humanity had brought this upon itself. Earth's military leaders, though disheartened, made plans to defend the planet. They worked to rebuild what was left of their forces, but it was clear that there were not enough resources left. They had been left to face the greatest threat in the galaxy alone. Every military strategist knew that humanity's only hope lay in their ability to hide and regroup, to play the waiting game until a chance at revenge came, if that chance ever came at all. But then, in the midst of this despair, something strange happened. A signal, quiet, faint, and encrypted, began to cut through the vast silence of space. At first, the Earth's military leadership believed it was a glitch, an anomaly. But then the signal repeated, a series of complex symbols and code that no one could decipher, until finally, one expert cracked the pattern. The signal was a message, and it was not from the Encore or any of the galactic powers they had known. It was from someone else, someone beyond the known reaches of the galaxy. The message was simple. We are watching. We will help. Humanity will rise again. Earth's leadership was caught between hope and disbelief. Who were these unknown allies? Why were they reaching out to humanity? The message had no details, no clues about their identity, only a cryptic warning that Earth was not as isolated as it thought. But it was a ray of light in an otherwise dark and hopeless time. Earth had been cast out of the stars. But now it seemed there was a glimmer of a way back. General Hawkins, one of Earth's most respected military leaders, had his doubts. The message was strange, unnerving, and the timing was too convenient to be trusted. But it was the only hope humanity had. He made the decision to follow up on the message. Earth's fleet, what was left of it, would attempt to track down this unknown source. They would take the risk. After all, what was there to lose? The Encore had already exiled them, and Earth had nothing left to lose but its future. The military leaders began to work in secret, assembling a small team of their best ships and scientists. They would leave Earth's atmosphere under the cover of darkness and follow the signal's trail into the deep unknown. The hope was that, even if they couldn't decipher who had sent the message, they could at least find something useful, anything that might give humanity the upper hand. Meanwhile, life on Earth grew quieter. Without access to the stars, the planet's industries slowed, its technologies stagnated. The bustling spaceports were abandoned, the ships that once flew across the galaxy now rusting and gathering dust. The once thriving trade routes had been shut off, leaving entire economies struggling to adapt to a world they had never prepared for. The atmosphere was heavy with frustration. People didn't know who to blame, whether it was the Encore, their own leaders, or simply the fate that had decided Earth's place in the universe. But one thing was clear. They were stuck, trapped on a dying planet with no way to escape. As Earth's fleet quietly left the planet's orbit, General Hawkins stood on the deck of the flagship, looking out at the stars. The vastness of space had once been a symbol of possibility and adventure. Now, it was a reminder of what they had lost. His eyes flickered to the ship's navigation system. The unknown signal was growing stronger, closer. There was something out there, but what it was, and whether it was truly humanity's salvation, was still a mystery. The fleet entered the deep blackness of space, following the signal with bated breath. They were leaving everything behind, their home, their families, their planet, for a chance that seemed as distant as the stars themselves. But in their hearts, there was still a flicker of hope. For the first time since the Encore had made their announcement, humanity had something to fight for again. They had a purpose, a reason to move forward. As the fleet drifted further into the unknown, the planet below continued its quiet existence, awaiting a future no one could predict. Earth had been exiled from the stars, but in the silence of space, something was stirring. Humanity would rise again. But how and when, no one knew. And as the fleet hurtled toward its uncertain destination, the question echoed in every mind. Would they return to find Earth still standing? Or would they discover that the galaxy had truly turned its back on them forever? The answer was out there, hidden in the void, waiting to be uncovered. And humanity was ready to find it. As Earth's fleet ventured deeper into the unknown reaches of space, General Hawkins stood at the helm of the flagship, his gaze fixed on the cold, black expanse ahead. His mind raced, filled with doubt and hope in equal measure. The faint signal they were following had led them to an uncharted part of the galaxy, a place no human had ever been, where the stars seemed to grow dimmer with each passing moment. The message had offered no clear answers, only a cryptic promise that someone, somewhere, was watching, and that help would come. But who were these mysterious benefactors? Could they be trusted? The fleet, a meager assembly of ships compared to the once proud Armada Earth had once boasted, consisted of only the best and brightest humanity had left. Scientists, engineers, and soldiers from every corner of Earth now found themselves united on this strange mission. They were no longer a divided species, clinging to their broken planet. No, this was their chance at survival, their one shot at reclaiming a future in the stars. And yet there was a lingering sense of unease. Everyone on board could feel it, an uncertainty that hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating the crew's usual determination. Despite the tension, the officers and crew worked in quiet unison. Every system on the ships was running at full capacity, yet there was an underlying fragility to it all. General Hawkins knew this mission was fragile. If they failed, Earth would be truly alone. cut off from the rest of the galaxy, vulnerable to the Encore's wrath, and perhaps even worse. The Encore had been relentless in their decision to exile humanity, and the consequences of disobeying their orders would be catastrophic. Earth's defenses were still in tatters, and their economy was struggling to survive without access to the galactic trade routes. Without allies, humanity was nothing more than a speck in the endless void of space. Hawkins rubbed his temples. There had been no word from the rest of the galaxy. The message they had received from the mysterious source seemed to offer no answers, only hope. It didn't sit well with him. The universe wasn't built on charity, and he had no idea who or what might be out there offering their help. Could they truly be trusted? Or was this a trap set by another alien race, taking advantage of Earth's weakened state? As Hawkins continued to ponder, the communications officer suddenly spoke up. "General, we're receiving another signal." His heart skipped a beat. He had grown used to the silence of deep space, and this unexpected transmission made him jump slightly. He had assumed the mysterious source was somewhere out there, but he had hoped for some kind of clue, something that could tell them more about their potential ally. "Put it on screen," Hawkins said, his voice steady, masking the nervousness in his chest. The communication officer tapped a few keys, and an image appeared on the large screen. It was a simple message, but this time it wasn't encrypted. It was clear, but it raised even more questions. The words flashed in front of them. "We are not your enemies, but the Encore are not your only threat. Prepare yourselves." The screen flickered off immediately after the transmission ended. Silence fell over the room like a heavy blanket, thick with confusion. "Are we sure this is from the same source?" Hawkins asked, leaning forward. "Yes, sir," the officer replied, checking the data again. "The signal source is consistent with the previous one. It's coming from the same region of space, but the content is unsettling." Hawkins stared at the blackness outside the window of the command deck, his mind racing. The first message had promised help, but this one was a warning. The Encore were a threat, yes, but now Earth's fleet had to wonder, who were they really dealing with? If someone was reaching out to them, were they truly an ally or something more dangerous? "We need to be cautious," Hawkins said, his voice low but resolute. "We don't know who we're dealing with here. We proceed with caution, but we stay on course. If help is coming, we'll be ready. If it's a trap, we'll fight." The crew nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. There was no going back now. The fleet pressed onward, moving toward the coordinates they had received, with nothing but the promise of an unknown ally guiding them. Days passed in the quiet of space, and the tension only grew. Hawkins could feel the weight of every decision, knowing that they were now racing against time. The Encore might not give Earth another chance. If this new ally was indeed someone who could help, they would need to act quickly. But what if they were wrong? What if this was all just another trick? One morning, as the ships drew closer to the coordinates, the crew detected a strange disturbance in space. The signals, once faint and distant, were now growing stronger. A massive anomaly loomed ahead, a swirling, energy-filled vortex that seemed to bend and twist reality itself. It was unlike anything the crew had ever seen. "We're entering uncharted territory," said Lieutenant Mendez, the ship's lead scientist. "This anomaly, it's huge. We've never encountered anything like this before." Hawkins stood up, his eyes narrowing as he stared at the swirling mass on the screen. He had been in command of many missions, but this felt different. The calmness of space had vanished, replaced by an eerie stillness that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "Prepare to send a scout team," Hawkins ordered. "We need to know what's inside. We have to understand this anomaly before we go any further." As the scout ships approached the anomaly, the entire fleet held its breath. For minutes, there was nothing but a deafening silence, broken only by the hum of the ship's engines. Then, without warning, a massive pulse of energy shot from the center of the vortex, sending shockwaves through the fleet. The ships rocked, Alarms blared, and the command center was filled with chaos. "Status report," Hawkins barked, gripping the edge of his console. "We're experiencing severe turbulence, sir," the communications officer shouted. "It's like the fabric of space itself is being distorted." The energy pulses grew more intense, and the fleet found itself being pulled toward the vortex. They had no control over their movements as the gravitational pull of the anomaly intensified, drawing them closer to the unknown center. "This is it," Hawkins muttered under his breath. "We have no choice now. We're in this together, no matter what happens." With every ship in tow, Earth's fleet entered the anomaly, the strange swirling energy consuming them whole. For a few moments, the universe outside seemed to warp, twisting, and shifting, until everything went completely dark. The last thing anyone heard was Hawkins' voice, steady and calm, cutting through the chaos. "Brace for impact," he said, as the fleet plunged into the unknown. And then, there was nothing. The void was suffocating. There were no stars, no ships, no sounds, just an all-consuming darkness that swallowed them whole. For a moment, time seemed to stretch into infinity. The fleet had been ripped from the familiar and thrown into the unknown. General Hawkins could feel the weight of it pressing down on him, the uncertainty, the fear that this might be the end. But amidst the eerie silence, something unexpected began to happen. The ships, once tumbling wildly in the grip of the vortex, suddenly found themselves pulled in different directions. It was as if some unseen force was gently guiding them, directing them along a new path. Hawkins gripped the console in front of him, eyes scanning the readouts, trying to make sense of the rapidly changing data. The space around them seemed to shift, the blackness dissolving into a soft, pulsing light, a kind of glow that had no origin but seemed to radiate from every corner of the void. "Sir, we're stabilizing," said Lieutenant Mendez, her voice calm but with a hint of awe. "The ships are all intact. We're not losing control anymore." "Good," Hawkins replied, though his voice was tight with uncertainty. "Keep me updated. I want to know the moment we have visual confirmation." The minutes dragged on, feeling like hours, but the strange pull they had experienced lessened. Soon, the strange, pulsating light began to take shape. It was no longer an abstract glow, but something more solid, more real. Ahead of them, an enormous structure appeared in the distance, an ancient, towering fortress made of a material they couldn't identify. The surface shimmered with strange energy, and it appeared to be floating in the center of a vast, artificial cavern, with walls that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. There were no stars here, no planets, just the fortress, suspended in the stillness of space. "This is not possible," Hawkins muttered, barely able to believe what he was seeing. How could something this massive exist without detection? It's beyond anything we've ever encountered," Mendez said, her voice filled with a mix of awe and terror. "Whatever this place is, it wasn't made by us." Hawkins' mind raced. The ships were still in orbit, but he knew they couldn't stay here forever. What had they found? And more importantly, who had sent that message? Was this place connected to the mysterious entity that had promised help? "Sir, we're being hailed," the communications officer spoke up, breaking Hawkins' train of thought. The officer's voice was filled with surprise, and Hawkins could sense the confusion in the air. "The signal. It's coming from inside the fortress." "Put it through," Hawkins ordered, stepping forward. The screen flickered for a moment before displaying an image. The figure on the other end was not human. It was an alien, tall and slender, its features strange and angular. Its eyes glowed with an intense, unnatural light, but there was no malice in its gaze. Instead, there was a sense of quiet authority, as though this being had been waiting for something, or someone, for a long time. "We have been waiting for you, Earth," the beam's voice echoed through the command room. It was not a sound, but a feeling, like the words were being transmitted directly into their minds. Hawkins felt a shiver run down his spine. He could feel the weight of the being's presence even through the screen. It was as though the alien was standing right there with them, its gaze penetrating every corner of his thoughts. "We are the Ulir," the alien continued, "and we have seen your struggles, your exile. You have been cast aside by the Encore, but you are not alone." Hawkins narrowed his eyes. The Ulir, he had never heard of them, and yet there was something oddly familiar about their presence. They were old, ancient perhaps, and yet they had been watching humanity, waiting for them to come this far. "You've been watching us?" Hawkins asked, his voice steady, though his mind was reeling. "Why didn't you reach out earlier? Why now?" The Ulir's eyes seemed to soften, and for a moment Hawkins felt as though the alien was looking directly into his soul. "We have waited for the right moment, General Hawkins. Your people are not yet ready. You have been marked by the Encore, yes, but you are stronger than you know. Your history, your resilience, it is something we cannot ignore. Why help us now?" Hawkins pressed. "What do you want from us?" The Ulir tilted its head, as if considering the question. "The Encore are a powerful enemy, yes, but they are not the greatest threat to the galaxy. There are other forces, older and more dangerous, that the Encore do not know of. Forces that will soon be awakened. You will need more than just your strength to survive them. You will need knowledge, technology, and power." Hawkins finished the thought. "Yes," the Ulir responded, its voice a low hum in his mind. "You will need to awaken the hidden potential within your species. You must become something more than you are, and we can help you do that." Hawkins' heart pounded in his chest. This was it, the turning point. They had been given a chance to reclaim their place in the stars, to fight back against the Encore, and to face the unknown threat the Ulir had spoken of. But at what cost? What would they have to sacrifice to gain this power? And could they truly trust these beings who had remained in the shadows, watching humanity's every move? "We have resources to offer," the Ulir continued, "ancient technology, knowledge of the stars that was lost to most of the galaxy. But your people must decide. You must choose whether to embrace this power or refuse it." A heavy silence filled the command room as Hawkins turned to face his crew. Every officer, every scientist, every soldier aboard these ships was waiting for him to make the call. Their eyes were filled with uncertainty, but there was also hope, a spark of hope that they could turn things around. General Hawkins took a deep breath. "Prepare the fleet. We move forward," he said, his voice firm. "But we do it carefully. We don't know what this power means, or what it will cost us. But we have no choice. Earth is counting on us." The command was given, and the fleet slowly moved toward the fortress. As they approached, the Ulir spoke again. "The path will not be easy. You will face tests, trials that will challenge your very nature. But you must succeed, for the sake of your people and the galaxy." As the fleet entered the massive structure, Hawkins knew that the real battle was only just beginning. The Encore were powerful, but there was something more dangerous lurking in the depths of the galaxy, something that could destroy everything humanity had worked for. And now, humanity had to fight, not just for survival, but for its very place in the stars. Inside the fortress, there was no turning back. The unknown awaited, and humanity would either rise to meet it or fall, consumed by the darkness. The atmosphere inside the Ulir fortress was unlike anything the fleet had encountered before. The walls shimmered with an otherworldly energy, pulsating in rhythm with the strange, glowing symbols that lined the corridors. It was both alien and familiar, as though they had entered a realm outside the bounds of human understanding. The air was thick with anticipation. Every crew member, from the youngest cadet to the most seasoned officer, was on edge. General Hawkins stood at the forefront, his hands clenched into fists. There was something intensely unsettling about this place. It wasn't just the sheer size of the structure, vast beyond comprehension. It was the sense of weight, as if this fortress had stood for eons, watching the rise and fall of civilizations. Now, humanity had arrived, and they were not sure whether they were walking into a sanctuary or a tomb. The EXILED, who had been guiding them from the very start, were nowhere to be seen in person. Their presence was felt in the very walls, in the air itself, as though they were watching through unseen eyes. And while their initial words had been filled with hope, there was a foreboding quality that now hovered over them. "Sir, the fleet is ready for the next phase," Lieutenant Mendez said, her voice tinged with uncertainty as she walked up to Hawkins. She was the closest thing he had to a confidant aboard the flagship, and they had shared many moments of leadership together. But even now, her usual composure seemed to waver. Hawkins nodded, still unsure of what was to come. "I know. Let's get this over with. The sooner we have answers, the better." They made their way deeper into the fortress, where the walls seemed to twist and contort in strange geometries. Each turn was more disorienting than the last, as if the structure itself was alive, changing in real time. Hawkins had to fight the creeping sensation that they were moving in circles, trapped in a labyrinth that had no exit. And then, as if summoned by their doubts, a doorway opened before them. It wasn't a physical door. It simply appeared, a shimmering passageway leading into a vast chamber. Hawkins stepped forward without hesitation, signaling for the crew to follow. As they entered the chamber, their breath caught. The space was enormous, far larger than anything they had expected. Towering above them was a structure, like a massive crystalline spire that seemed to pulse with energy. The entire room was suffused with a soft, golden light that emanated from the spire, and around it, a holographic map flickered to life. "This is it," Hawkins muttered to himself. "This is what we've been waiting for." From the shadows, a presence stepped forward. It was a EXILED, the same figure that had communicated with them earlier, but this time, it was no longer a disembodied voice. It was solid, its form taking shape in the light. The alien's body shimmered with a strange metallic sheen, and its eyes, those intense, glowing eyes, locked onto Hawkins with a look that was both knowing and distant. "General Hawkins," the EXILED said, its voice reverberating in Hawkins' mind as much as it did in the air. "You have entered our domain. You are ready for the trials." Hawkins felt a chill run down his spine at the mention of the trials. They had been warned, but nothing could have prepared him for the weight of those words. "What are these trials?" Hawkins asked, his voice steady, though his mind was racing. "They are tests," the EXILED replied. "Tests of strength, of intellect, of spirit. You will face what you have never faced before. But the reward is great. Survive these trials, and you will gain the knowledge and power you need to protect your people from the coming storm. Fail, and you will fall, along with the galaxy." The words hung in the air like a heavy omen. Hawkins could feel the tension in the room, the weight of the EXILED's presence pressing in on him. He knew there was no turning back now. He had led his people this far, and he couldn't fail them now. The EXILED raised its hand, and a new vision appeared before them. A hologram of the galaxy, stretched out in all its vastness. Pinpointing Earth's location, the map showed the known regions and the uncharted territories beyond. It also highlighted a dark, ominous space that wasn't marked by any familiar stellar formations. Instead, it was simply a vast emptiness, a place where no ship had ventured, and no sensor could detect anything. "Here," the EXILED said, its voice soft and almost sorrowful. "This is where the true enemy lies. Not the Encore, who have been your oppressors, but something far older. Something that has been awakening in the depths of the universe. The darkness that stirs here will consume everything, unless you learn to wield the power that is now within your grasp." Hawkins stared at the dark spot on the map. It felt wrong. It was as if this place, this enemy, existed outside the laws of reality as they knew it. It was a place that no one could survive. "We have no time to waste," Hawkins said, his voice steady despite the doubts gnawing at him. "What do we need to do?" The The EXILED turned, gesturing for them to follow. The first trial is ahead. You must pass through the gate of strength. Hawkins wasn't sure what he expected, but the sight that greeted him was something he had never imagined. Before them, in the center of the massive chamber, stood a giant gate, its surface covered in ancient symbols and glowing energy. It was an imposing structure, a testament to the EXILED's advanced technology, yet it seemed like a living thing. The gate pulsed with energy, shifting and changing as they approached. "I've read of ancient gates," Mendez said, her voice awe-stricken. "But nothing like this. This feels alive." Hawkins nodded, his mind already preparing for what lay ahead. "Whatever this is, we move forward. We have no choice." With that, Hawkins stepped forward, feeling the weight of every decision he had made up until now. The gate responded immediately, its energy crackling to life as the symbols on its surface shifted and rearranged themselves, forming new patterns. As Hawkins reached out, the air in front of him thickened. His muscles tensed, and the gate seemed to press against him, resisting his every move. "This is the trial of strength," the EXILED's voice echoed. "Not just of the body, but of your will. You must prove that you are worthy to wield the power that awaits." Hawkins took a deep breath. Every part of him screamed for him to step back, to retreat, but he had come too far. He could feel the challenge in the air, the pressure building as the gate seemed to push back with all its might. Every step was a battle of will, of determination. And then, in a flash of blinding light, the gate opened. Hawkins staggered back, blinking in the sudden light. The other crew members behind him let out a collective gasp. Beyond the gate lay something that defied description, a vast, glowing chamber filled with swirling energy. At its center stood an object unlike anything they had ever seen, a spherical core of pure light, pulsing with a force that seemed to echo the very heartbeat of the universe itself. This, Hawkins realized, was what they had come for. The power to save humanity, or destroy it. As he stepped forward, the trial had only just begun. The EXILED had kept their promise. There was power here, but it came with a price. The real battle had yet to unfold. The room beyond the gate of strength was unlike anything Hawkins had imagined. The air was thick with energy, a crackling current that surged through the very space they occupied. It felt as though they had stepped into the heart of the universe itself, a place where the laws of reality bent and shifted like a dream. The light emanating from the sphere in the center of the chamber was almost blinding, yet it was not harsh. Instead, it was a warm, inviting glow, one that seemed to hum with an ancient power. Hawkins took a step forward, his boots echoing on the metallic floor. His every instinct screamed at him to approach cautiously, to question everything. But the pull of the sphere was irresistible. He could feel it calling to him, urging him to come closer. The EXILED had warned him of the trials, but nothing could have prepared him for this. "This is it," Hawkins murmured to himself. "This is what we came for." The crew members followed behind him, each of them equally mesmerized by the sight. Lieutenant Mendez stood to his right, her face pale but determined, her eyes fixed on the sphere. There was fear, yes, but also hope, a strange, inexplicable hope that this was the key to saving humanity. As Hawkins moved closer, a sudden voice broke the stillness. It wasn't the EXILED speaking. It wasn't even the voice of anyone from his crew. It was something deeper, a voice that resonated not through sound, but through the very essence of their being. "Do you seek power?" the voice asked. It was soft, like a whisper carried on the wind, but it cut through the chamber with undeniable force. Hawkins froze. The crew behind him halted as well, all of them turning their gazes toward the sphere. The voice seemed to come from everywhere, from the very core of the sphere itself. It was a voice of ancient wisdom, but also of warning. "I seek to save my people," Hawkins replied, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "I seek to protect humanity from the darkness that threatens us all." A pause. Then the voice spoke again, its tone thoughtful, almost amused. To save, you must first sacrifice. To protect, you must learn to wield the darkness as well as the light. Hawkins frowned, confusion creeping into his mind. What did the voice mean by darkness? They were here to gain power, not to become something else. The EXILED had promised them knowledge, strength, the ability to fight back against the Encore and whatever ancient force threatened the galaxy. But sacrifice, darkness. I don't understand, Hawkins said, his brow furrowing. What do you mean by darkness? The voice laughed, a soft, knowing sound. Power is not a simple thing, General. It is not just light or shadow. It is both. And those who would wield it must understand its cost. The trials you face will not only test your strength, but your very nature. Will you sacrifice your soul for power? Will you risk everything for the chance to save those you love? Hawkins felt a chill run down his spine. These words were not what he had expected. This was not just about victory. It was about a price that would be paid in blood and spirit. He thought of Earth, of the people who had suffered under the oppression of the Encore, of the countless lives that had been lost. And now, here he stood, on the brink of a power that could change everything. But at what cost? The crew around him was silent, each of them wrestling with their own thoughts. They had come to this place seeking salvation, but now they were confronted with the stark reality that salvation might come at a price they were not willing to pay. The sphere before him pulsed, as if waiting for an answer. The light from its core intensified, filling the chamber with a brilliant glow. Hawkins could feel the power surging in the air around him, could feel it beckoning, calling to him. It was intoxicating, this sense of limitless possibility. You are here for a reason. General Hawkins, the voice continued. You have the strength to survive, but you must prove that you have the wisdom to wield it. To save your people, you must first learn the greatest lesson. To understand the balance between light and dark. To know when to strike and when to yield. Hawkins' mind raced. What was this place? What was this power that it offered? He thought back to the EXILED, their words, their promise. They had spoken of knowledge, of a power that could turn the tide of war. But what was it truly? What had they hidden from him? Tell me what I need to do, Hawkins demanded. What is the cost? The voice was quiet for a moment, and when it spoke again, it was as if the very air in the chamber grew colder. The cost is this, the voice said. You must face the darkness within yourself. You must face the fears, the doubts, the darkness that lurks in the hearts of all who seek power. You will not be able to run from it. You will have to confront it head-on. Hawkins stared at the sphere, the realization slowly sinking in. This was not just about strength. It was not just about defeating the Encore or any other external threat. This was a test of his very soul. Could he truly wield this power without losing himself to it? The sphere before him began to hum, its energy reaching a crescendo as the chamber trembled. The trials were about to begin in earnest. Hawkins could feel his pulse quicken, his hands tightening around the controls of his suit. He turned to his crew, meeting each of their eyes. They were all in this together. They had come this far. We have no choice, Hawkins said, his voice resolute. We move forward, together. And with that, he stepped forward into the heart of the glowing sphere. For a moment, there was nothing. No light, no sound, only an endless, suffocating darkness. But then, images began to flood his mind. Memories, fears, regrets, the faces of those who had fallen in battle, the ones who had given everything for a future they would never see. The weight of their sacrifice pressed down on him, threatening to break him. But as the darkness closed in, Hawkins did not falter. He had faced death before. He had faced fear before. And now, in this moment, he would face his greatest fear, the fear of failing those who depended on him. Suddenly, the darkness was gone. The images faded, and Hawkins found himself standing in a new place. The sphere had transformed into something else entirely, an enormous throne room with a figure seated at the far end. The figure was shrouded in shadow, its features hidden. But there was something familiar about the figure. Hawkins stepped forward, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The figure at the throne raised its head, and Hawkins was struck by the recognition. It was him, or at least it looked like him, a reflection of his own fears, his own self-doubt, the dark version of himself. "You seek power," the dark figure spoke, its voice a twisted echo of his own. "But what will you do when it's all too much to bear?" Hawkins stood tall, facing the dark version of himself. "I will bear it," he said, his voice unwavering. "For Earth, for my people, I will not let this power consume me." The dark figure smiled, a cruel, knowing smile. "We'll see about that." The chamber shifted again, and Hawkins knew the true trial had begun. The real test was not of strength, but of willpower, of resolve, to face the darkness within and still emerge victorious. And so Hawkins stepped forward, ready to face whatever awaited him, because in the end, humanity's future depended on it.